right, welcome to another installment of the Fragments of Silicon reviews. 4 reviews up this week. The first of which is Black Jewel. So Black Jewel is a action platformer game that is created in a couple of styles. You might be able to see from the footage here that it's kind of given away by that big C64 loading screen that this game is a loving homage to the games of the C64. And it's a specific type. I'm not sure if it was like a proper subgenre, but it's kind of this barbarian action platforming game. It reminds me a lot of Rostan, which I brought up on the show previously. The thing about Rostan is more combat focused than, say, Super Mario Brothers, and I think one of the defining features of that game and games that tried to rip off was, for lack of a better term, stiffness. This is a stiff game, but not as stiff as I thought it would be. That is to say, the jumping isn't awful. It's not great, but I was expecting, something more along the lines of, say, Castlevania, where any game where you're kind of locked into a jump arc.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the case here.
And knockback's about a football field long.
Yeah. I'm like, no, he's a lot more maneuverable than I would have given credit for. I guess it's worth mentioning that you are the barbarian Ryan.
Ryan?
Yeah. I'm like, which is not a name I was expecting for a, fucking Conan the Barbarian type. I bet he gets mocked at the barbarian festivals.
It's fine. He'll just murder him.
Yeah, I mean, that's also how that goes. You are the barbarian hero, Ryan. Your task is to rescue the titular Black Jewel from, Skullface, Darkcore. Admit, I didn't get to the end of this game. That's mainly because it's dead simple. And that's by design. And that goes back to the Commodore 64 connection. Because, I don't have a history with the Commodore 64, but I do know enough that this is in the style, not just in terms of, the graphics and the sound. Those are there. I couldn't tell you if this was, pixel perfect on par with what a C64 game would look like back in the day. But that's less important than it captures the feel of that.
Yeah, I know the physics are cheating way too much than what a C64 could do.
Yeah, I'm suspecting that as well. I also don't think that the C64 could produce a game that looks this good. This is looking much more like an Amiga game to me than or it was the Amiga version of a C64 game that had the graphics all redrawn.
Yeah, definitely not a base C64.
Yeah. But I think the bigger connection to the C64 is the gameplay. And that is your stock C64 control stick had a joystick and a button. And that's how this game plays. So it's one of those games where up is jump, and that will never not be awkward to me.
The feral screaming in my head could probably be heard from a mile away.
It's not bad. It's just a gameplay style I'm not used to. And in the game here, your one button is your attack. There's no defense. There's no other anything. It's just attack. And this game has a score system, but that's kind of based on how far you get. Because
Shocker.
there's no room here for finesse. It's just one fucking attack. Done over and over. So it's very limited. Even for back in the day, like your average NES game could do more, literally, because it had 2 buttons to work with. And yes, I know select and start were also buttons on the NES controller, but those were used to pause and select menus most of the time. If you were a competent developer, if you were either ambitious or incompetent, you use the select button for like the jump. It's like you were either trying to do too much or you just didn't understand how standard controls worked on the NES. But that's getting out of bounds. So yeah, this game is very simple, even for an action platformer. But what it goes for, it gets pretty good. It's just outside of what it's doing, there's not much to talk about. In terms of enemies, that's another thing. This is also done room by room by room, which is a hallmark, one of the hallmarks of not just C64 games, but pretty much any 8-bit computer. Like, you weren't getting good scrolling unless you were at the Amiga or you were fucking John Carmack. I'm not joking either. Because, like, the Amiga not only had good scrolling, it had probably the best scrolling going on at the time. Like, it could do multiple parallax layers and other things that the NES could only dream of.
Yeah. You weren't getting that really on a, like, regular home console till Genesis era.
Or, you were stuffing with the NES with a pretty powerful coprocessor chip.
You'd be paying over $100 for this cartridge level of fun.
Not necessarily that much. Like, one fucking Virtua Fighter or a Virtua Race on the Virtua Racing on the Genesis levels, but because like pretty much any game like post Super Mario Brothers that was using one of these chips of some kind. Like, that's one of the secrets of gaming of the past. I think I talked about that at some point.
Oh, yeah. I think we talked about in the discussion that when we talked about Mode 7.
Yeah.
Because, surprise, that was one of the chips to help with that.
No, actually, no. That was
didn't?
No. That was a default mode of the Super Nintendo.
Huh. Oh, that's Super FX I'm thinking of.
Yes, there you go. Anyway, like I said, everything is one room, very compact challenge. Usually defeat a monster or jump over the spikes or the annoying fireballs. Honestly, those were the greatest challenge here. Sometimes a boss like the dragon would show up and took a few tries to beat him, but he wasn't that difficult.
Yeah.
It's just, like I said, this game is under the heading of fine, I guess, but I didn't really find I found the game to be too simple and too outside of my nostalgic comfort zone. Like I said, if you're imitating the NES or Super NES or Genesis, that style, I grew up on that style of gameplay. This style is not unfamiliar to me. And yes, it can be done good, Castlevania and such, but this is just decent. And it really doesn't aspire to be anything more than a decent time. It's a short time as well. And, all this is reflected in its price point. It clocks in at a mere $2. And $2, this is a very easy recommendation. It's not all that impressive, but for a cup of coffee, it's a pretty good time. Granted, that time is probably going to be about 30 minutes to an hour at most. Still, we've reviewed much, much worse for much, much more.
We'll be getting that later tonight. I mean, wait, what?
Oh, no. I'm like, I have some bones to pick with Delta Light. Anyway, so yeah, that'll about do it for Black Jewel here. Be sure to tune in after the break, as Petty Fan will be reviewing Hyper 5.